should have listened to my intuition the moment I stepped onto Crestfall College's campus. The brochure I'd seen months before showed only bright quads, stately brick buildings, and smiling students. But in reality, the place felt oddly hushed. It wasn't silent exactly. There was plenty of bustle between classes, but there was an undercurrent of caution in the way people looked at me, as if I was an oddity or a curiosity they'd never expected to see again. I'm Chris. That's what I've always been called, and I'd never questioned whether the name truly belonged to me. Growing up, I was just a normal kid in a normal suburb, finishing high school with decent grades and heading off to start my college career at Crestfall. Nothing unusual. I arrived on a Saturday morning in late summer, eager to settle into my dorm, meet new people, and shape the next few years of my life. My parents dropped me off at the campus entrance, hugging me goodbye in front of a path lined with flowering bushes. Then I dragged my suitcase across a lawn toward my assigned building, Thatcher Hall, a modest dorm with a worn sign and a grayish-brown facade. Before I even made it to the check-in table, a student I'd never met stopped in his tracks and gaped at me. He was tall, wearing a campus orientation t-shirt and lanyard. His expression flickered with shock, then confusion. "Chris?" he asked, voice soft. I thought you were... How? It's you?" I tried a polite smile. "Yeah, I'm Chris," I said. "I guess you have me at a disadvantage?" He just stood there staring, then stammered an apology and hurried off, glancing over his shoulder as though I might vanish. I shrugged it off. Maybe the school had a system of matching orientation helpers to new arrivals, and he'd read my name in the registry or something. People can act strangely when they're stressed. But over the next hours and days, that moment turned out to be a preview of what I'd face all across campus. Someone would spot me and do a double take. Another person would sidle up, ask if I remembered them, then back away warily when I shook my head. It wasn't universal. Some students paid me no attention at all, but a disconcerting fraction recognized me, or believed they did. By the second day, I had my new dorm room more or less set up. Thatcher Hall's floors looked old enough to creak with every step, paint peeled slightly near the windows, and the shared bathroom down the hall had flickering overhead lights. Still, it was comfortable enough for a first year. My roommate, Marcus, was assigned last minute, and we introduced ourselves that afternoon. He was tall, broad-shouldered, a friendly guy studying some type of engineering. I soon realized he was local. Crestfall was only about an hour from his hometown. He gave me a pat on the back when I told him my name, though something flickered in his eyes. I recognized that flicker from the orientation student, but Marcus just cleared his throat and said, "Huh, a second Chris. That's interesting." Then he changed the subject and began chatting about dorm layout and meal plans. Eventually I gathered that there had been another Chris at Crestfall, a student who vanished a year earlier under mysterious circumstances. The rumor mill said he was a second year who simply stopped showing up to classes and then never returned to his dorm. No conclusive evidence or police follow-up had resolved the matter, leaving a swirl of speculation about whether he'd run away or been met with something sinister. People tried to keep it quiet, not wanting to spook new arrivals. But it was hardly a secret. Plenty of returning students knew the story. The odd part was that the missing Chris apparently looked exactly like me. down to the hair color, the facial features, even my height and build. Enough that on campus, people were doing double takes, wondering if the missing person had abruptly come back. The first time I heard about the other Chris directly was in the student union building. I was buying a coffee at the snack bar when a girl wearing a music club t-shirt with a flute case slung over her shoulder approached me. "Excuse me, but are you Chris Daniels?" she asked. I shook my head, telling her my last name was Yates. She let out a low exhale and apologized for bothering me, but her eyes searched my face, almost disbelieving. "Sorry, it's just you look so much like Chris Daniels," she said. "He was a friend of mine. He left last year," or she trailed off. She didn't have to finish the sentence. Everyone knew the missing Chris never turned back up. I asked if she was sure we looked alike. She nodded, stepping closer to study my features. "Even your voice is similar," she murmured, then apologized again and rushed off. By the end of my first week, I was more than uneasy. I was disturbed. Enough people insisted I was some sort of carbon copy of this other Chris that I couldn't pass it off as a meaningless coincidence. The next Monday, I found the library's reference section and typed "Chris Daniels missing" plus Crestfall College into the archives. But campus records had only one or two vague mentions. It was as if the administration had tried to keep it on the low. A short note about a second-year student who never returned from winter break. Some speculation about depression or transferring out. The official stance seemed to be that he withdrew from the school, but off the record, people insisted he disappeared. No articles in the local press. No mention of a family searching for him. This total absence of official data unsettled me further. Despite everything, I tried to focus on classes. My schedule had me taking a mix of general education courses and a couple early classes in my intended major. The campus at large was scenic. Footpaths curved around manicured lawns, and ivy climbed the old stone walls of the main academic buildings. On the surface, it was a typical college environment. Yet I could scarcely avoid noticing the side glances and whispers whenever I walked to class. Even some professors did a mild double take, as though seeing a face from last year's rosters. I heard them mutter, "It can't be him," or "impossible," but never confronted them about it. I didn't want to stir the pot. A part of me clung to the hope that it was a bizarre chain of coincidences, that the missing student's face just happened to align with mine. That changed the day I was assigned a partner in a writing seminar. The professor directed me to pair up with a student named Lisa Moore. As soon as I introduced myself, she turned pale. She stepped back, eyes flicking down as if my presence forced her to confront a ghost. Eventually, she apologized. "It's just, I used to hang out with Chris Daniels. You look exactly like him," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. The same posture, the same mannerisms. I didn't know how to respond. "I'm sorry," I offered, feeling foolish. I asked if maybe we could talk after class because it was time for the professor's lecture. She nodded reluctantly. When the lesson ended, I found Lisa waiting in a corner, books clutched against her chest. We sat outside on a low stone wall. She told me she had known Chris Daniels quite well. They'd taken a music appreciation course together and became friends, occasionally studying in each other's dorm rooms. She described him as friendly, bright, and occasionally a bit moody. Then about halfway through the previous year, he began acting strangely, isolating himself, rambling about how something was haunting him. He insisted that random people on campus recognized him or expected him to be someone else. Lisa grew uneasy with his talk, especially when he started skipping classes. Then one day, Chris Daniels simply vanished. The college gave no official explanation. Some rumors said he left in the middle of the night. Others said a roommate heard him talking to someone outside the dorm, but never saw who it was. That was nearly a year ago. He never returned. I sat there digesting the parallels. Lisa eyed me warily, as though my entire being was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "Are you sure you're new here?" she asked softly, half joking, half serious. I insisted I'd never stepped foot on campus until move-in day. She said she believed me. In fact, she said I acted a bit more open, even though physically I was near identical to him. He had a certain sadness in his eyes. Near the end, Lisa added, "I see a bit of it in you, but not as strong." She then gave me a phone number and said if I ever needed help dealing with the stairs or wanted more stories about the old Chris, she was around. Time marched on, but my discomfort deepened. People I didn't know called out "Chris" in the dining hall, then realized I wasn't the original Chris Daniels and turned away, uneasy. Over in the dorm, my roommate Marcus started avoiding me. He spent more hours out in the lounge or at friends' places. One night I confronted him about it, asking if there was a problem. "No," he said, though his expression carried tension. "It's just, I knew Chris Daniels. Or at least, we had a class or two together. I can't handle how you look exactly like him, that's all." I pressed him for details. He shrugged, claiming he didn't know much beyond the rumors. "But you're like a living reflection," he mumbled. That line stuck with me. Eventually, curiosity turned into an obsession to find out what truly happened to Chris Daniels. The campus rumor mill was inconsistent. Some said he was depressed and left for mental health reasons. Others whispered that he stumbled onto some campus secret or was pursued by a group dabbling in odd spiritual rituals. Another theory was that he had simply dropped out after an argument with his family. None of it explained the utter disappearance. So one weekend, I decided to rummage around the library again, but this time more thoroughly. The librarians were busy, so I quietly accessed the older yearbook sections and scanned them for a photo of Chris Daniels. I found a yearbook from the year prior. Flipping through, I found the second-year students page, scanning row after row. Then I saw him, smiling, wearing a casual t-shirt in the photo. My heart nearly stopped. The face on the page was my own, down to the shape of the jaw and the slight wave in the hair. The same color eyes, the same angle of the eyebrows. The name typed below the photo read, Christopher Daniels, music major, class of 2006. I stared at that image for so long that time seemed to halt. The resemblance to me was total, not just a sibling-level similarity. It was as if my own face was placed in that book. I had never taken a photo for a yearbook here, so how was it possible? My mind reeled. Did I have a twin I never knew about? Did my parents keep a secret from me? But that seemed ridiculous. They'd never mentioned adopting me or anything, and I had a normal childhood. Another bizarre possibility. Was I Chris Daniels, somehow with no memory of the previous year? But that made no sense. I had high school transcripts from another city. My entire youth spent in a place hours away. The confusion was paralyzing. I shut the yearbook with unsteady hands, Some other students in the library gave me odd looks, as if suspecting I'd discovered something unsettling. For the next few days, I tried to bury it, focus on my classes, my normal routine, and ignore the stares. But each time I glimpsed my reflection in a window, I saw the face from that yearbook and wondered who I truly was. My parents, when I called them, seemed normal, asking how classes were, never implying anything about another Chris. I wanted to confront them, but didn't know how to phrase the question. Hey, did you birth me or adopt me from a family who once lived in Crestfall? It was Lisa who forced the next step. She cornered me after class and said she had to show me something. Leading me to the old music building's second floor, she took me into a storage room that smelled of dust and old sheet music. She rummaged in a large filing cabinet and withdrew a battered notebook. He left this in my dorm room shortly before he disappeared, Lisa explained. I've kept it hidden because it creeped me out, but I think you need to see it. Inside, pages filled with frantic writing, references to nightmares, claims that people recognized him for something he didn't remember, repeated statements like, "Everyone says I was here last year. I can't recall the first day of orientation, but they claim I was at every event. And this place is swallowing me." The final pages contained repeated lines, "I must leave. I'm not who they think I am." My blood chilled as I recognized the same predicament in reverse. I was the new arrival who physically matched a vanished student. He'd apparently felt he'd been forced into an identity he didn't recall. It was inverted, but parallel, in a way. Reading that final line, "I must leave. I'm not who they think I am," made me question whether the original Chris Daniels had also been someone else. Could it be that Crestfall churned out illusions of its students, replacing them in subtle ways? Or was it simpler, that Chris Daniels suffered a breakdown, believed he was replaced and vanished under the weight of that delusion? I wasn't sure. Yet I couldn't brush off the sense that the campus itself had become a stage for repeated manifestations of Chris, each wearing the same face, doomed to vanish. The idea was too horrifying to dwell on. Then everything escalated in a single weekend. My roommate Marcus abruptly packed his belongings and left, claiming he'd swapped dorm rooms. The campus housing site said he'd relocated to the newer dorm across campus. He never gave me a direct reason, but rumor had it he didn't feel comfortable sharing a room with that Chris. Meanwhile, other students who recognized me as Chris Daniels started say how I was showing the signs again, acting paranoid, skipping small social gatherings. Friends or classmates of the original Chris Daniels approached me, wanting closure or answers. They insisted I must be him or an echo of him. Others who believed the original Chris had met a tragic end started side-eyeing me, as though suspecting I was an elaborate hoax or a cryptic phenomenon. The tension in the dorm halls was palpable. In my desperation, I spent more and more time searching old nooks of campus, looking for a clue as to how or why Chris Daniels vanished. The college had a labyrinth of basement tunnels connecting some of the older buildings. I found references to them on an old campus blueprint in the library. I heard rumors that the missing Chris used to wander these tunnels at odd hours, presumably practicing music or seeking solitude. If there was a place where he might have hidden or something about him remained, it would be there. Maybe I'd find an item that explained how we shared the same face, or a diary entry that revealed a deeper secret. So one night, around 11 p.m., I took a flashlight and snuck into the music building's basement, searching for the tunnel entrance. The hall's underground felt ancient. Stone arches lined the walls, the air thick with dust and the faint drip of water. My footsteps echoed in an unsettling way. My plan was to trace a route from the music building to the older science annex, where I'd heard the original Chris Daniels once had a part-time job sorting lab supplies. The tunnel was cramped, piles of old chairs and random junk shoved against the walls, forming a path barely wide enough to squeeze through. Graffiti streaked certain sections, names, dates, and cryptic drawings. My flashlight revealed a mention. CD was here, scrawled in black marker. I froze upon seeing those initials. The date next to it was from the previous year, around the time Chris Daniels vanished. The possibility that I was literally walking his final path made my skin tingle. When I pressed further into the darkness, I heard something, footsteps, or an echo of my own movement. I paused, shining my beam around. Then, out of a hidden recess, a shape loomed. My heart lurched. For a fleeting instant, I thought I saw a reflection of my own face staring back at me from the gloom, but it was gone in a blink, leaving me uncertain if I'd glimpsed an actual figure or my own reflection in a broken mirror or glass. I tried to approach that recess, but it was blocked by heavy crates. Despite tugging, I couldn't move them on my own. Shaken, I turned back. The tunnel in front stretched on, and I forced myself to keep going, though each step felt heavier. Eventually, I reached the science annex basement. Searching the storerooms, I found no direct evidence, no hidden diaries, no leftover items. But I had the unshakable sense that I was treading a repeating cycle, retracing footsteps from a prior year. I almost wanted to call Lisa, share what I'd found, but it was well after midnight. Instead, I decided to head back to the dorm. The next morning, I awoke to a string of bizarre messages on my phone, from unknown numbers, all asking me to meet them in specific campus spots. "Come to the old courtyard near the bell tower," read one. Another. "We need you in the amphitheater, Chris. There's something we must show you." They never identified themselves. It felt like a trap. I ignored them. Yet it wasn't enough to ignore them. Over the next few days, I felt watched, as if multiple sets of eyes followed me around campus. My class attendance slid. I found myself pacing my dorm room or the library, trying to recall if I'd encountered these watchers or if it was simply paranoia. Lisa pressed me to talk. She said others were gossiping that I might vanish soon, just like the other Chris. She asked if I was planning to drop out or if I was in danger. My exhausted mind struggled to explain. Everything I said sounded insane, that I was a double of a student who left, that the campus itself might be orchestrating some bizarre, repeating narrative. Lisa tried to be supportive, but I could see fear creeping into her eyes. It all culminated in a single, disorienting day. My phone alarm never went off, so I woke near noon, missing my morning classes. The dorm hall was eerily empty. Typically, there'd be people scurrying to lunch or heading back from lectures, but I encountered no one. I reached the main lobby, glanced outside, and realized the entire quad was deserted. A hush blanketed the campus, reminiscent of a holiday. Confused, I checked the calendar. No holiday. So I ventured outside. The sky was overcast, casting an odd half-light. I strolled across the lawn, calling out to see if anyone was around. No response, just the wind in the trees. Nearing the library, I spotted a single person stepping around the corner of the building. I recognized him from orientation, a senior named Josh, the same one who originally greeted me with shock. He flagged me down, looking relieved. "Chris, oh, thank God," he said. "What's going on?" I asked. Josh whispered that the entire campus had been told to evacuate for some emergency drill, but apparently they forgot me. That made no sense. Why wouldn't they ring the alarms or loudspeakers? And how had Lisa or any friend not told me? Josh just shook his head, looking deeply unnerved. "They said your name specifically. They said if we see you, do not engage. They've claimed you're part of the reason for the evacuation." "That's ridiculous," I responded. "I have no involvement in anything." Josh only gave a helpless shrug. "All I know is they told everyone to gather at the stadium. The missing student from last year apparently returned and it's dangerous, or something like that. I refused to follow them. Then they vanished like a large group just left campus in a hurry. No buses, no announcements, it's not normal." We parted ways in confusion. I decided to check the stadium. Maybe the story about an evacuation was a rumor run wild. But as I walked across the deserted walkways, a sense of dread deepened. The campus felt suspended in time. I reached the stadium gates, locked, not a soul in sight. Then I heard footsteps behind me. When I turned, I saw two individuals. One was a man with short hair wearing a campus security badge. The other, a student. They both stared at me in the same manner so many had, astonishment tinted with fear. "You can't be here," the security man stammered. "They told us you were gone. You're not supposed to come back." I asked who they were. He just shook his head. "Look, you need to leave the campus. This is bigger than me, bigger than any of us." Frustrated, I demanded clarity. He refused. The student with him looked on the verge of tears. Then the two retreated. That left me alone again at the stadium. Each door was locked. As I paced in circles, I realized the entire campus was staging a ghostly reenactment of what might have happened to Chris Daniels. Everyone deserted him, or turned on him, or was forced away, leaving him no choice but to vanish. Or was it something else? Could the campus have some phenomenon that demanded a Chris every year, leading to a repeated disappearance? The notion was too surreal. Yet I couldn't deny how closely my story mirrored the old rumors. I made a choice. I'd go back to my dorm, gather my essentials, and leave. If the college wanted me gone, or if there was a deeper menace that lured me here purely to replicate last year's events, I wouldn't let it. I marched to Thatcher Hall, found my room, and began stuffing clothes and books into a duffel bag. My phone had no signal, possibly jammed by the campus's strange hush. The building was empty. Doors stood ajar. Some rooms abandoned mid-lunch or mid-study, as though people fled in a rush. During my frantic packing, I caught a reflection in the window. Another face behind me. I spun, but no one was there. Adrenaline soared. I forced myself to remain steady, just grab my stuff, get out, call a rideshare or something from off campus. I stepped into the hall, ready to descend the stairs, when a voice behind me said, "Leaving again, Chris?" I turned. A person who looked exactly like me. His clothes were slightly worn and his expression was blank. I froze. He smirked, then whispered, "I was the first. Now you see how it ends." My mind reeled. That had to be Chris Daniels, right? The original who vanished, or another copy. Fear spiked, but I avoided describing it as heart-pounding or anything else. I demanded to know who he was. He just grinned, that lifeless grin repeating, "You can try to escape, but they'll find you." Another Chris, lost in the same place. Then he vanished around the corner in the blink of an eye. I gave chase, but the hall was empty. Only a single staircase leading down deserted. My plan to leave the campus escalated in urgency. I half ran down the steps. On the ground floor, I found the front doors to Thatcher Hall chained shut from the outside. I circled to the back exit, which led to a small loading dock. That door was open, but led to a walkway enclosed by tall hedges. The entire campus was silent except for a rustle of wind. I jogged across the quad, heading toward the main gate. Something flickered in my peripheral vision. Someone wearing a hood, watching me from behind a statue. Then another shape behind a column. I didn't linger to find out who they were. I just kept going. When I reached the main entrance, I found the gates locked with a heavy chain. The campus map kiosk deserted. My phone's signal returned just enough to show a single bar. I tried calling my parents, but it refused to connect. Sent a text. "Help me. Something is wrong. I need a ride." The message lingered on sending for minutes. In desperation, I climbed the fence. Dropping down the other side, I found the normal street leading away from Crestfall. At that moment, my phone beeped. A text from Lisa. "Where are you? People are saying you vanished." The irony nearly made me laugh. I typed back, "I'm at the front gate. I'm leaving. The campus is empty. Are you safe?" But the text wouldn't send. I marched down the road, duffel bag over my shoulder. The old oak trees lining the street cast long shadows. After about a quarter mile, I reached a curve. The road behind me, leading back to campus, looked normal, but quiet. In front, the next stretch seemed deserted. That's when I noticed something bizarre. A sign that read, "Crestfall College, 1 mile," pointing back the way I'd come, as if I was heading in the opposite direction from campus. But I'd just left campus, so how was it still a mile away? Confusion warred with the desire to keep walking. I pressed forward. The road meandered, lined with thick pines, no houses, no traffic. After maybe another 20 minutes, I realized I was back near the same gate, from a different angle. My mind struggled to rationalize it. Did I get turned around? Perhaps a side path. But the road was mostly straight. Another sign told me, "Crestfall College, 1 mile," again, pointing behind me. It was as if the area around campus had rearranged itself to prevent my escape. I tried a side path that branched off the main road, but it curved and eventually dumped me at the back fence of the college. I found no breaks in the chain link tall enough to slip through. By then, the day had grown late, the sky tinted with an early sunset. Exhaustion plagued me, along with the creeping certainty that I was trapped. The campus environment had formed a loop or labyrinth. I'd heard rumors about such phenomena in old myths, people wandering in circles, never able to leave. It was reminiscent of the story about Chris Daniels vanishing. Maybe he tried to flee too, ended up lost in the same cyclical path. As dust settled, a hush fell again. My phone battery was nearly dead. I typed this account in the notes detailing each step. The last time I tried calling Lisa, an error message played. No more text came in either. I walked along the fence line searching for an exit until the shadows merged. In the gloom, I saw shapes drifting among the trees inside campus. Maybe illusions, or maybe watchers. Then I reached a corner of the fence near an unlit building. The gate there was wide open. My nerves screamed caution, but it was the only gap I found. So I stepped back onto campus property. Crossing the lawn, I spotted the person who looked like me again. He stood near a statue of the school's founder, his posture slack. He raised a hand. "Come with me," he said in a voice exactly like mine. Despite dread, I followed, half in a trance. He led me down a short walkway around the side of a building and into a courtyard. The place was ringed by arches. A single lamppost flickered overhead. He paused, turning to face me. "You see now," he said. "This college demanded a Chris, so it shaped one from the old. Last year, it was me. Now it's you. The cycle repeats." I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't emerge. He stepped backward into the deeper shadows of the courtyard. "If you want to be free, you must vanish, or else you become the next memory that people vaguely recall." I stumbled after him, but he was gone. Only the hush of the courtyard remained. In the distance, I heard the chapel bell chime a haunting tone. Glancing up, I realized the entire campus was immersed in darkness. No dorm lights, no street lamps except the lone flickering one overhead. My phone battery winked out for good, leaving only this half-finished text. I've tried to recall the events precisely, but everything feels dreamlike. I keep telling myself I exist, that my name is Chris, that I have a life beyond these walls. Yet all the official records might claim I was here last year, or that I vanished. Maybe tomorrow, a new Chris will arrive and find me missing. If anyone outside these gates stumbles upon my final words, please believe them. This campus has a hold on whoever bears the name Chris, or at least on those who fit a certain mold. The original Chris Daniels discovered that too late, and it claimed him. Now it's my turn. Though I want to break free, the deeper truth might be that I was never separate from him. The resemblances, the identical name, these things defy coincidence. I fear that in a matter of hours or days, I'll vanish entirely. People will forget me or conflate me with the other Chris. The few who recall me might say, "He looked just like that missing student." Then a year from now, another face might appear, wearing the same name, stepping onto Crestfall's campus in the same naive excitement. The cycle continues, a macabre loop with no exit. I have placed these words in a folder on this borrowed laptop, hidden in the dorm's network drive. If I vanish, maybe a friend or a curious staff member will find them. Let it serve as a final record of how I came here expecting an ordinary college life, only to discover I was repeating an old pattern. Perhaps my words will break the cycle, or maybe the campus will swallow them. But at least I tried. If you read this and you're considering Crestfall College, remember, not everything about the place is as it seems. Some of the older buildings hold secrets that date back decades. Some vanishings never get reported because official records wipe them out. If you arrive and people keep insisting they recognize you, if your face matches a missing student too perfectly, leave before the campus claims you too. Don't become the next Chris, fated to disappear without closure. There must be a world beyond these silent courtyards, and I hope someone escapes to tell the story we could not. If I vanish tonight, let these lines stand as proof that I existed, if only for a short time, under the name Chris. If you see someone on campus who looks exactly like me next year, you'll know the cycle has begun again. You'll know Crestfall lured another unsuspecting soul into its labyrinth of repetition. And you'll know there's no rescue, no explanation, just an endless echo of a vanished student, destined to reappear, only to be lost once more. I don't know how it ends, but as I file these words away, I suspect my own ending has already been written. Only the campus remains, hungry for its next repetition, waiting for the next Chris to arrive.